Hey guys, happy Friday. Mario here out of Dallas, Texas. And on our advanced markets training today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about whole life insurance policies, kind of like a 101 foundational style training. We're going to go through different categories. And this is meant to really just continue to reiterate and solidify your foundation of knowledge when it comes to whole life insurance. So, first off, life insurance policies come in basically two primary types: permanent life insurance and term insurance. Okay, the most popular is term life, primarily because it's typically less expensive. However, your policy eventually expires with term life insurance, either at the end of a set period, the term, or when you reach a minimum or a maximum age. So at that point, you must either get a new policy at a higher rate, if even possible, based on your medical conditions or that you might have, or go without protection. So, unlike term, permanent life insurance does not expire, and it's designed to cover you your entire life. So as long as you pay your premiums and you don't cancel your policy, the policy will pay out a death benefit when you pass. Now, there's several different types of permanent coverage underneath the whole life insurance category. And so it's real simple. So we'll go through each one of them. While the premium is more expensive than term life insurance, the list of whole life insurance advantages is significant. So first, what we're going to talk about is your whole life premium stays the same for your whole life, right? So the fixed premium of a term insurance policy typically ends at 10, 20, or 30 years. And with some other types of permanent coverage, the premium cost goes up later. But with whole life, the premium you pay when you take out the policy never increases. So the younger and healthier you are when you take out a whole life coverage, the lower your rates will generally be for life. That's a selling tool that you should really keep and keep close to you. Now, another point is that you can build cash value with a guaranteed rate. So a whole life policy has tax deferred cash value that grows and it is guaranteed rate every single year. Another point is that your death benefit is guaranteed. So with some other forms of permanent life insurance, the death benefit could vary on how well the policy market investments and cash value fare. With whole life, your policy is guaranteed to pay out at the face value. Okay, and then also you may receive dividends depending on the carrier that you use. So if you purchase whole life insurance from a mutual company, right, then you may also receive dividends. So mutuals are owned by their policy holders. So annual profits can be redistributed as dividends each year that there is a profit. So that has consistently been the case for years and years. There's some companies, mutual companies, that have paid out dividends consistently every single year for over 120 years. Okay, so when you factor in a whole life is tax free, not tax deferred. So when you consider a guaranteed rate plus dividends, okay, of over 120 years, most of them will say, hey, technically these are not guaranteed, these dividends, but for the last 120 years in the Great Depression and during the 2008 crash, we still pay dividends. Most pretty much feel or take it into account as if these are guaranteed. Okay, so how does whole life compare to other types of permanent coverage? Okay, so whole life insurance is the most popular and straightforward type of permanent policy, but it's not the only permanent option. So the first is IUL, right? Universal life insurance. It's a type of permanent policy that offers more flexibility than whole life, but fewer guarantees. Unlike whole life, universal life premiums are variable, allowing you to raise and lower your payments within certain limits. Okay, and that's also another advantage to IULs. Okay, so in an IUL, you tell them, hey, look, if you can afford $500 a month right now, okay, down the road, if you want to increase your monthly premium, you can. You want to put more into your policy, or in case of a bad economic time in your life, you can also drop that policy premium. So this can make the advantage of permanent life insurance more easier and attainable. However, IULs offer fewer guarantees. Minimum premium payments can eventually reduce cash value and erode its value. This can result in a need to pay more money in later years to keep the same levels of coverage or death benefit. However, with sufficient funding, the cash value is guaranteed to grow at a specified minimum interest rate with tax benefits. Now, this is depending on the insurance company's investing performance and the market interest. It also grows faster. However, universal policies are not likely to earn dividends. Okay, most of them don't, or at least a lot that we're contracted with, even when issued by a mutual company. Other types of universal life insurance policies are available, which can provide even more cash growth available, albeit with fewer guarantees. So is an IUL better than a participating whole life or vice versa? Really, my answer to that, guys, is it really just depends on the client. Really depends on what they're trying to accomplish. Do they want big money in, big money out faster, right? Do they even have access to big money? Are they looking to grow it over the course of time? How risk averse are they, right? As far as, see, there is risk built, there is risk in an IUL. Do you guys know what risk there is in an IUL? Anybody? It's kind of a trick question, so you got to think about it.
Can you repeat that, please? The question?
What type of risk do you run or do you have when you have an IUL?
Did you just stay in the same place? Doesn't go up?
There you go. The risk is that there will be years where you get zeros. That's the risk, okay? With a participating whole life, you'll know you'll never get a zero, right? Because the growth on an IUL is tied to the growth of the market. And so while you can get a 10, a 12, a 15, a 20, you can also get zero. And that does happen quite often. Whereas with a participating whole life policy, you're getting a fixed rate plus dividends. So even if the dividends didn't pay out that year, which again, most have a pretty impeccable streak of paying dividends, but even if they didn't, you'd still get the fixed rate. So you don't have any risk of running a zero. Does that make sense? So sometimes when you stack them up side by side and you factor in the 0 years versus the years where it's just always growing no matter what with dividends, that's where people see higher cash value over time with participating whole life, okay? So let's look at index universal life. Okay, so you had universal life insurance. Now you get indexed universal life insurance. So IUL is essentially, it ties cash value growth to the performance of an index, such as an S&P 500, with caps for minimums and maximums rate of returns. Not always, okay, but they give you a cap on growth and usually a cap or a ground floor on the bottom. For example, in a year that the index is up 20%, your money may only grow 10 to 12%, right? Conversely, if you choose an index that is negative for the year, your cash value may be 1% if there's a cap on the bottom, or a minimum on the bottom of 1, or just 0, which is what we already talked about. So each insurance company has set its own selection of indices available, and you may be able to choose from more than one. And you may also be able to allocate a portion of your cash value to a fixed interest rate as well. So on an IUL, okay, just like in an annuity, they're going to select, usually it's about 8 to 10 different indices that you can actually choose to put your money in. You don't always have to go 100, right? Sometimes you do 25, 25, 50, right? You do a different variation, and you can also allocate a certain amount, so let's say 50%, to the company's fixed rate at the time. So there is a fixed rate option in the IUL, but a lot of people don't usually take that, okay, for one reason or another. So, so just important to note. Now, another type of policy is you've got a guaranteed universal life policy. So it's called a GUL. So offer little or no cash value. Instead of providing cash value growth, this policy is structured to provide permanent coverage with lower premiums than whole life insurance, okay? So in many respects, it's like a term policy that ends at the maturity date. So when the policy holder turns a specific age, usually 100 or older, this type of policy is not suitable, though, for building wealth, Okay, so that's a GUL. And then finally, you've got a VUL, which is a variable universal life insurance policy, which, by the way, a VUL proceeds an IUL, right? VUL is what we sold for a long time before IUL even was around. And this is important for you to know, guys, because you're going to have a client that says, oh, I already know all about that. And, I had one of those universal life policies in 1990 or 1987. Right out of the gate, they did not, because IULs didn't even come around on the scene to the late 90s. Okay, so that person had a variable, right, life insurance, universal life policy. So a VUL gives the option to tie cash value growth to a grouped investment subaccount. Okay, with these policies, the insurance company gives you the same asset performance history and fee information that a regular broker would, right, or brokerage. And you have to choose how much to invest in each option. However, unlike the whole life, your cash value can actually decrease if the funds do poorly. So the thing that you want to remember is, with a variable universal life, you can lose. It's just like having your money in the market, okay? Now, there are some very detailed intricacies which make it different than just having your money in the market. But remember, we're dealing with everyday average people. The idea for them is universal life, right? IUL and VUL are all different policies, but the variable universal life policy is one in which your money can actually lose. So, as mentioned earlier, term life insurance is a popular form of life insurance, but there is no cash value and it does not provide permanent coverage. So, term life only lasts for a specific amount of time or term. Although many policies can be converted into a permanent policy at some point before they expire, you're only paying for life insurance and you have no wealth building or cash value component. So the cost is significantly lower than whole life, okay? So now what I want to do real quick is go through a list of pros and cons of whole life insurance, kind of like at a glance, okay? So we'll start with the pro, right? Permanent protection that lasts your entire life. Okay. A con is it's significantly more expensive than term life. Pro, okay, premiums never increase. Con, okay, best time to take it out is when you're younger for more affordable premiums. So somebody who's a little older, they're going to get higher monthly premiums. A pro, the death benefit will not decrease. A con, your protection needs may change as your life changes. Okay, so what if you needed more death benefit, or you didn't need as much death benefit coverage anymore, right? I think the goal of most people is to grow their wealth over time, right? So when I take out a whole life policy when I'm 20, right, I've got a bunch of young kids, or in my 20s, I've got a bunch of babies, right? And I take out a ton of death benefit coverage. But then later on in my life, right, maybe I don't need so much death benefit coverage because I've built up some trusts and I have a bunch of investments and things like that. So for whatever reason, maybe somebody's protection needs change. You can't decrease it and increase the cash value coverage later on down the road. So builds tax deferred cash value at a guaranteed rate. Con, cash value may grow at a slower pace than some of the other permanent policies. Pro, may pay dividends if purchased from a mutual insurer, and a lot of times it's almost 100%. Okay, and then con, it requires paying higher premiums compared to term. Pro, cash can be borrowed without a credit check. Okay, cons, loans against the policy are charged interest. Okay, pros, you can withdraw money from your policy. Cons, you may have to pay taxes on your money withdrawn from a policy. Pros, one of the simplest forms of permanent insurance. And con, more complex though, however, than a term life policy, okay? So I'm gonna finish this off right here. It's just a generalized statement, okay? It says, is whole life insurance worth the cost? Okay, so remember, guys, I'm going to preface this by saying there is no such thing as a cookie cutter product or strategy for our clients. We are to service each client as an individual based on their specific needs, their goals, right? The outcomes of when they want to retire, how much do they want to retire with, who do they have to take care of in retirement, like all the factors. Okay. So that said, I'll read this. So, like any other financial product, whole life has its advantages and disadvantages, along with some unique features. So it provides permanent coverage, guaranteed premiums that don't increase, has guaranteed cash values, a guaranteed death benefit, and offers possible dividends. However, it is typically more expensive than most other policies, and the cash value growth may be more limited than other permanent policies depending on performance. So whether whole life insurance is worth it depends on the life situations and goals of your clients. If you want protection that lasts your entire life, then a whole life policy from a reputable provider can be an option to consider your needs. It also can be worthwhile for older people concerned about like estate planning strategies and reduce the effects of taxes on their heirs. So the idea and the takeaway here, guys, is this. We are to be experts and we are to work to get to a place where we are that all-knowing, most trusted advisor of our clients. That said, I'm going to just say this. Let me stop the recording.